Hey, it's Chris. What are we doing today? Quarter 1, 2024 is freaking upon us. So, what are the big ones of quarter 1? I mean, we'll talk about January individually, separately later, but this is encompassing the first 3 months of the year. Some big names, and the best part about this is there's a lot of unknowns still at this point, but let me run you through the ones we do know that you should have on your eye, watching your wallets, and avoiding the FOMO. Let's go! Now, big disclaimer here at the beginning of the video, I have to say that there are probably a lot from several big name companies that we just don't know about. Haven't heard anything from Mindclash. Haven't heard anything definitive from Awaken Realms. Haven't heard anything definitive from CMON. Haven't heard anything definitive from Chip Theory Games. So I would imagine that all of these companies are probably going to have something launching within this quarter. What? Which ones? How much cash do you have to throw at the computer screen? Well, no one knows. The only thing that I'm going to wager is probably going to be in quarter 1 from any of those companies at this point is going to be CMON, because we have seen over on Gamefound that they have the upcoming pre-launch page. They're now, again, going to Gamefound. They have been Kickstarter exclusive, pun there, up until this point. And so we're seeing the Master of Eternia, their version of that, go to Gamefound with a reprint. And why do I think that one's the next one upcoming? Well, because they also just put a little social media reference to Alex from Board Game Co. and his unboxing or something along those lines on their Twitter. So for them to be talking about any project usually like that, also the page 2 and 2 make 4, essentially, if you will. Are you excited about that one coming back? Of all of the ones that are coming back from CMON, that's the one? Okay, I guess so. We'll see. Nostalgia, one versus all with a He-Man Master of the Universe thing. But apparently it's also going to be available more widely than it was the first campaign. So that's probably going to be the biggest offering. What else is going to be in store for us? No idea whatsoever. All exclusives are going to be available. And they say that 2 brand new characters, Cyclone and Jitsu. I don't even know who those are. 5 to 10 years before my prime, if you will, from that aspect of things. So yeah, I mean, they're going to Europe. They're going across the world, essentially. They don't say whether or not there's going to be more content. They don't say whether there's going to be stretch goals or whatever else it's going to be. Is it going to be sort of like the CMON time machine sort of situation where they're selling off stock in that sense? But I mean, clearly you're going to a wider market at the same time. So it's all speculation at this point. Who knows? I mean, it's definitely got the old school nostalgia vibe going with the plastic. So take that for what you will. Is the market there? I have no idea what the market is for this. So take that as well with a grain of salt. The other one that I don't really have a timetable on that's been recently really hitting the hotness and somehow is already like 30th in the customizable games, and this is Earthborne Rangers, the second printing with new expansions. It's sort of a spin off of the LCG model with a cooperative adventure card game set far off in the wilderness of the far future, because not really post-apocalyptic in that sense, but just you're building your deck based on your character's history, you're traversing this open world, and you're slowly improving it as you go along, creating new memories. People seem to really like it, but again, I don't think it solves the LCG problem if you're like me in the first place. So again, this one's going to be ported over to Gamefound as well. No definitive date, but again, nearly 10,000 people following at the time of me filming this. So that's a lot of people for this style of things. It really has a very predominant solo audience in the first place, which, I mean, again, like all these customizable card games and, you know, builders, if you will, do. So we'll see what it brings. We'll see what new stuff it has in store for you. And if you're a big fan of the first one, you can get it. And if you missed around the first time, well, you can maybe get in the second time and see how much the price changes from that aspect of things. And it might save you money from trying to buy it jacked up on the secondary market as well. Cascadia franchise. We have the 2 sequel follow-ups, Cascadia, Rolling Hills and Rolling Rivers, which are going to be doing more of the Railroad Inc. style approach, it looks like, on a crowdfunding aspect, because there are going to be 2 separate standalone roll-in rights in the Cascadia brand. And you may know them from Cascadia Landmarks, and now the roll-in rights, which is fine, I guess. We'll kind of see what it entails and how it differs. And each of the boxes is going to play 1 to 4 players, but you can combine them to play up to 8 players at a time, I guess, as well. Slightly different how you're going to be managing things between the 2 games as well. Each of them are going to have different maps. There's going to be some slight differences in terms of a special central unique die that changes the way each round plays out. environment sheets, each based on their own different regions, nature habitats, if you will, from Cascadia, the original, special gameplay elements to go along with that, as well as obviously the habitat and advanced completion cards, like we've sort of seen with the base game and now the expansion with landmarks. So you're rolling dice, collecting wildlife, the nature tokens that we are familiar with, the habitat cards you're familiar with, and just puzzling it out. So is it gonna be different enough to tempt you? I mean, is it designed solely as a solo game first versus a port of Cascadia, really, in a nutshell? And that's sort of the dichotomy that we've seen, because I saw another argument a couple months ago, and I quoted it then and I'll quote it now, is it seems like overall speaking, the best roll and write games are the ones that are created simply because they are roll and writes first and foremost, not because they're adaptations of other games successfully created previously. And so that's sort of the issue, dilemma, kind of everything I'm wondering about, worrying about. Now, we know that Flat Out doesn't really do exclusives. You get a little promo pack to go along with it that you might pay more for later, maybe not, depending on where and when you get it, or, you know, frankly speaking, if you just late back, you can get it usually at the same price 6 months later. And so that one's going to be out there in Q1. No other firm date as known at this point. The next one up from Off the Page Games, Cores of Discovery, a game set in the world of Manifest Destiny. Now, if you're like me and you've looked at the previous off-the-page games, and I've covered one of them on the channel, I have a copy of the other one up there, but, you know, Mind Management, Harrow County, which is going to be delivering this year. Fantastic game. But this one is going to be different. Sort of the Lewis and Clark-esque theme, but you're going to be playing over 2 chapters, different mechanisms, different goals, and different components to give them a completely different feel. That's going to be 4 expansions later already. Ooh, I hate kind of seeing that in the Board Game Geek description. But unlike Harrow County and Mind Management, this one is going to be cooperative. And that really actually excites me because the mechanisms based off of an IP comic book incorporation from like an indie side of the comic realm, it really is kind of unique and engaging from that aspect of things. You're going to be chasing around essentially in one of these, basically a beast, and trying to shoot it down and take it out. But one of your players actually might be a traitor trying to stop you as a ghost. So it kind of has the vibe of Harrow County. I'm not sure how I feel about the hidden traitor semi-cooperative mechanic, so I hope that's just like optional from those aspects, and I believe based on this description on Board Game Geek it will be at this point. And then they say the second challenge is going along with it. The second chapter is going to be adding a fog, which is going to change the terrain, adding a new level of deduction to go along with it, which would stay with the fitting themes of the other deductive elements to go along with the previous 2 games. So again, sometime in Q1, and this is going to be another, you know, I'd say smashing hit, because they put out quality games. Again, whether or not they're right for you, that's going to be the big question you always have to ask yourself in these situations. Next up, I covered this one, I think, as well on my anticipated, or just outside my anticipated top 10 of upcoming on 2024. And this was originally going to be coming through retail with WizKids, and then it sort of branched off, and I don't know the details of that, but now it's coming from Play to Z. The new company got a little bit of fluff. It got a little name, cred, design, you know, highlighting from several big names in the industry that are going over there and doing things there. But this is Ascending Empires, the Zenith edition. Basically, you think of your Twilight Imperiums or your Eclipses, right? Now imagine if that was a dexterity-based game. And that's essentially what you've got going on here. Tumbling Dice meets Flick Fleets meets Eclipse, right? That's kind of the vibe. And this is an old game being redone now anew. So details are kind of sparse. Sometimes in Q1 we're going to see it. The next one up has a pretty quick turnaround in 2. And so I would also hope with Cascadia being a roll and write, I mean, how soon do you need to come to us before you actually have that thing squared away? Like just numbers logistically, hopefully. So I would think that maybe at least Cascadia you could still get in 2024. But anyway, we'll diverge there. But that's Ascending Empires, Zenith Edition. What the Zenith Edition is all going to entail is going to be interesting. More, better, deluxified expansions included, like that previously mentioned Manifest Destiny. We'll see. Next up, Q1, we're getting a reprint of Thunder Road Vendetta on a lot of people's lists for one of the best games of the year. We're getting the new Chrome Edition reprint, but you're also getting the Carnival of Chaos expansion. So more Mad Max Chaos Take That style racing. And that's not going to be everyone's ilk. And this wasn't one I backed on crowdfunding at all whatsoever. I looked at this, especially the first time it failed around, and I said, no way. Second time around, I even said, nah, not really. Then it came out, and then I was like, oh crap, maybe I should actually. So I found like a store in North Carolina or Colorado or something online, and like I went to their Facebook page and I like paid credit card over the phone and they shipped it to me. So at cost. So I actually got a great deal. But is this going to change your mind with it? No, another expansion is not going to change your mind with it. But Chrome Edition has some exclusives that we really haven't seen as much from Restoration Games with their other games. And so that's going to be the question. Now, Return to Dark Tower has some, I think, with the content that just hasn't been widely available, hardly at all. But I don't think it's technically been exclusive. And, you know, I was a little gun shy after I got burned with Fireball Island. I just, you know, some people loved it. Nostalgia tripped me a little too much, and I wasn't really happy, frankly speaking, with the final product. I did not think the final product was the quality it should have been. But that's my own personal opinion. Thunder Road, though, is something different. And so that's why I'm always willing to give people another shot to show me what you got. So that's going to be launching sometime in Q1 as well. Then Northstar Games is bringing us another environmental game, not in the evolution style of things, but this one is just plainly called enough. This one is just plainly enough called Nature. It's going to be an ultimate reimplementation of evolution and evolution climate, though, as per the Word Game Geek page. And it's a modular system, unique ecosystems, and they say they've been making this game, evolving it, if you will, since 2018. So 5 modules at launch, release of 1 to 3 modules a year for the next decade, they say. Holy support, Batman. So there is a lot of resource going into this. So you kind of hope you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket, but they're clearly very interested product-wise in making this flagship, potentially, of Northstar. So, I don't know. They're saying you more gentle experience, easier to teach. Modules are easy to set up, build, break down, incorporate, and you can play with anywhere from 0 to 3. Now, the question is, if you're putting out, 5 modules at launch and 3 every year past that, you're only playing with 3 at a time. Within the first year, you're already hitting 6, and then 9 in 2 years. So, it's more than you're ever going to need. And the question is going to be how different, power creep, accessibility, advanced, meta style, or is it going to be creep, this way, or is it just going to be breadth of depth this way? And that's going to be the big question. Do you want something that is completely adaptable to a family, casual, or even advanced? And how well can you actually do that from an adaptation side of things? I'm going strong with the puns tonight, apparently. This is maybe what I really wanted out of Earth in the first place from this past year. So I've got my eye on it. Northstar puts out some solid stuff, but is it right for me? And will it stand up? Especially, again, that's a big commitment to it. Not that you can't, but I'd like to see the, base game do really well and be really well received before, I'm going to invest, years and years worth of follow-up. I'm doing that enough with Marvel Champions already and not getting that enough played, so I don't need too many more of those either. Now, the next one up is going to be a slight departure because it's not what you'd usually expect from this designer, but it's going just adjacent. Now, Shem Phillips has a few other games published outside of Garphill, and like their previous Noctiluca, this is going to be similarly published elsewhere through Arcus Games, and this is Storm Raiders. Racing, sort of like the Thunder Road Vendetta, Mad Max style, only mix it with the old school Twister movie, if you will, because you're going to be chasing storms and becoming storm raiders as you raid and salvage across the Atlantic to the broken shores of actually Atlantis. Drafting, pick up and deliver, variable asymmetric player powers, 8 rounds of traversing the landscape with, storm terrain, environmental changes going on. I mean, I'm open to it. I'm not a huge pick up and deliver person whatsoever, but I'm kind of intrigued to see what Shem can do with this aspect of things. So I don't know if I'd call it middleweight. It's probably going to be lighter. It's probably going to be about the weight of a Thunder Road Vendetta with a slightly different mechanistic approach, obviously. Maybe a little bit less take that. I'd base off the description, at least alone. But what else at this point? No idea. But that one I think is supposed to be launching in January. So we might get more news and more traction here very shortly after the time this is released. Now the next 3 we'll just hum through very quickly because they're all also reprints. Reprints of things relatively successfully done in the past with slight twists. Actually, you know what, let's make that 4 because the other 4th one isn't a reprint, but it's a standalone expansion. We have Among Cultists, which is getting a reprint with a new expansion. I will have a video out before them talking about my feelings of the current expansions as well as the base game for one of the most well thought of, I would probably say, social deduction games of 2023. Then we also are having a reprint, a very, very recent reprint of a recently delivered game of Last Light, which 4X in 60 minutes is its tagline, with tons of factions. How asymmetric are like the 37 different factions that are going along with it? I don't know. Is it really that unique? Yeah, I think there's not really anything else that does it in that time frame. But I've also heard that if you don't really like 4X either, it's not going to change your mind just because it's a shorter time frame. But I mean, it's on, again, a lot of people's lists for top 10s. If you go over to the Board Game Geek meta listing for 2023, now is the reason they like it because it's doing something different? Or is it really that much better? And I don't know. And I ranted and raved a couple times already about the fact that their ads were like, revised rulebook. I'm just like, come on now. But okay, more stuff. We're going to see it more over on Gamefound. So it's got this weird dichotomy of less than 60 minutes, but we're going to deluxify the hell out of it, right? To make up for the shorter time frame. And the planets look very nice. And the content from that side of things, I can't argue with. So if this is one of those games for you that you go, I love it, and I want to bling the hell out of it, and blinging games out in the first place is a whole separate argument of a video why you should normally hardly ever do it. But if that's you on this one, well, you're going to get your chance here in the middle of the month of January on the 16th. And 16th seems to be a hot day this month, if for no other reason. But we're also getting, on that same day, just like with Among Cultists, we're getting the reprint of Monolith's Conan, which has been, I think, relatively harder to get. It's sort of been this under the radar ever since released One versus All dark horse, if you will, especially with some of the later expansions, which were shipped out in a later wave, which never really got any traction at all from a distributor retail side of things, I think. So I think people really kind of like the system because they used that system and they tried to use that system for Batman and failed spectacularly the first 2 times around. In a nice way, I say. In a nice way, I'm saying it, you know? And so they're going back to Conan, and people seem to really like Conan, which is a big surprise to me again. I grew up just after Conan, so I never had any influence by it, but it really raised Godzook's amount of money the first time around on crowdfunding. So go back to something that works, and, you know, there you go. And then last up, we have a new standalone, I believe, edition of Spire's End, more of the solo-based narrative card play driven game that's again relatively well thought of. The previous 2, I think, was it Hildecrest was the second one, again, indie publisher, indie designer, small company. They're putting out another version of things. So again, the question was something like this with 3 iterations now. If you're looking to get into it, is there a best one to get into? Should you get one of the other 2 as opposed to the first one? Is it really upgraded? Is it really significantly different? What are the differences going to be? How are the mechanics going to be different? Which one is going to be suited for me? And hopefully, I mean, with a lot of this stuff, that'd be something I'd hope to be on a campaign page. To be able to tell you, okay, this version is the right one for you, right? This version is the right one for you if you're looking for this type of experience. Whatever that may be. Mechanistic, weight-wise, lengthwise. So we'll kind of see what they show us. And again, all of these last 4 launching on the 16th. Then supposedly in February, going back over to Gamefound here, the latest from Creative Games Studio, and this is, I'm assuming, pending on some of the finalization of the delivery of Chronicles of Drungaor, the Age of Apocalypse, because they have a game set in, well, hell. It's Dante, the Invasion of Hell. So, okay. Based obviously off of the famous poem, The Divine Comedy by Dante. They're making an adventure out of it, fusing somehow exploration and the various circles, layers of hell, epic battles against enemies in a war-style game. Do you go the safe route? Do you go for the objectives? How do you explore the corners of the Dark Realm? You know, do you stay on track with your RPG or do you side quest, essentially, right? And if there's something I trust Creative Games Studios to do, it's put out something that is slightly different, just like they did with Chronicles of Drungaor and their, you know, twist on the dungeon crawl in the first place. They say no 2 gameplay is going to look the same. Surprises, compelling, branching storyline, experienced passage of time that's going to change things as well as you're playing, and how hell itself might change shape as you play. Epic characters, historical figures incorporated. I don't really think there's a whole lot of gameplay, although I think they've updated the Gamefound page at least several times since they actually went live with it. So there's going to be plenty of details prior to the campaign, and so we still have almost 2 months at the time of me filming this before it's going to be launching live. So I would expect to see a little bit more detail. I would expect to also probably see some more concrete video smorgasbord coming out in the near future too. Unless they're holding the cards close to the vest. I always am interested to see what companies just kind of say embargo, no such thing, put it out whenever, and then other companies are just kind of like, you cannot launch things until the day of launch. So it's just interesting, food for thought there. So we'll see what they do. The next one was actually supposed to launch back in 2023 at some point and got delayed from Pika Games. This is FLOE, from sort of the company, I believe, of Endless Winter. And so we're going to see what they can do with sort of a Mancala Hidden Victory area movement control style with an adventure strategic approach. So icebergs, islands, discovery, maneuvering, fighting, as well as just maybe kicking back and cooking. So a little bit of an RPG feel there as you're expanding this map tile, slowly taking actions with your hero as you go on your boat, as well as sharing a map with all the players at the same time. Move, interact, region to region system, and they're really hyping this unique region to region system that allows you to navigate with ease, basically via the shapes of the ice in the first place, determining movement. So you're not counting squares in the grid like we're normally used to. Going for achievements, and when you have all of your achievements placed, well, that's how you win. It's not story driven, they say, but you have your own progress sheet where you can unlock additional content for your individual hero. So I'm intrigued by this. Now, it'd be even more intrigued if this was cooperative, but it looks like competitive just based on the description of Board Game Geek, so we'll see. I'm really trying to intrigued to see what this one can do and how this is going to be different. We saw Kinfire Chronicles, the latest from that one, sort of launch and then cancel with sort of, again, a different point-to-point movement system here, so we'll see how people are receptive to this one as well. Interestingly enough, now we're going actually back to the Stefan Feld collection. Now, interestingly enough, we're going back to the Feld collection with Queen Games here in the middle of January as well. And you're going to get games 7 and 8, which I didn't know that was a thing until now, recently. So apparently we're just tacking them on, even though I don't remember them saying at the beginning, but I'm probably just misremembering, right? So the two that you're getting is Nassau as well as Kathmandu. And both of these, I think, are original properties that they're going to be bringing about. And both are going to have more of a set collection, obviously, variable point scoring buffet salad of options, whatever you want to call it. And so Nassau is going to be the 7th game, and you're going on pirate adventure, essentially, where you're trying to get the most points based off of 4 sessions, 2 phases in each session. First phase, gather, sell stuff, buy stuff, prepare. Second phase, clever placement system, ? That gives enough room for tactical decision making as you go out and basically pirate. So I don't have a freaking clue. What's going to be the interest in this? Are people over the city collection? Are they past it? I don't have a clue from that aspect of things. And Kathmandu is going to be more of a dice placement game where you use 3 of 5 dice on a turn-by-turn basis to gain resources to move around landscape boards. So your traditional Feldian point buffet, if you will, more than anything else. But again, actual mechanics with this one whatsoever? Not really. So I mean, do you want to pay $130 for a deluxified Euro you know nothing about at this point? That's going to be what you got to ask yourself. Because you got to have 7 and 8 match 1 through 6, right? Yes, sir. Yes, indeedy. The other big one here, potentially, maybe going to be running at the end of January, is EVE Online, Offline, the board game, based on the very popular video game. So, right, the Kickstarter pre-launch page, I gotta be careful not saying preview page there, because they're not preview pages, let's not kid ourselves, folks, says in the graphic that it's going to be launching in January 2024. So War for New Eden, it's got 7,000 followers. There are no details whatsoever. Board Game Geek comments forum section is bare, except for somebody saying they played it at Essen and they're going to support it. So I don't know. Again, IP, video game, tabletop. You hear me shout that from the rooftops every time, right? How do you take a game as complex as this is and make it into anything that's not Twilight Imperium, right? That's what it gives me heavy vibes of right now. And so we'll see how differing or far from that assumption we are when it actually goes live at some point, because, you know, it's going to be heavily miniature based as well. So we're talking some cash. And how does it compare? Or did you get burned by, or feeling burned by at least? Because technically, you know, it's still out there and you'll have it at some point, right? With Stellaris, right? That one, everyone was happy with that so far, right? Haha. Sticking with the Dante's Inferno theme, somehow apparently this one's also going to be launching at the end of February-ish from Red Moho with Inferno, the deluxe edition, where you're battling or trying to soul manage between, no, literally you're managing souls, folks. That's not a euphemism. You're going down and managing these souls through the 9 circles of hell, and Dante slowly is making his way through those layers as well. And so when Dante gets down to the end of, you know, the layers, well, whoever has the most points based on how well you've guided them through getting infamy, if they correspond to the right circle when you bring them in. And then you're going to be also splitting time between the Inferno phase doing that, as well as the Florence phase, where you're going to be utilizing the city to get your resources or to gather infamy that way, trying to bring souls down in order to basically improve your standing in hell in the first place by saying I've brought more souls to them more than my opponents. So I don't know. I mean, the Gamefound preview page has kind of a couple cool pictures of the game board, but how does it actually play? Well, there's, you know, about a dozen or so mechanisms listed on the Board Game Geek page that you can smatter through and glance at if you want, but no actual gameplay at this point, so jury's kind of out from that standpoint. So obviously we have a few others that are flying under the radar, but also big names. Tiny Epic Game of Thrones from Gameland Games. I mean, I don't know what else to say with this one. Does the Game of Thrones IP still attract people? Is it still attractive overall? I mean, I think the answer has to be yes, because the Game of Thrones IP from a tabletop side of things has really been vastly underutilized. And so being able to play the Game of Thrones game of like diplomacy is a very tough sell. And so if you can get that in a smaller, more easily accessible package as a whole, I'm actually going to be really intrigued by that. What is going to go on with it during the crowdfunding campaign? How soon are we going to see this one? Again, no details whatsoever, but you get to be the houses that you imagined as you're reading the books, or probably you watched the series and reading the books. Oh my gosh, that's never going to get finished, folks. It's never going to get finished. George R. Martin. Anyway, though, speaking of other things that are sort of on the radar but at the periphery and we don't really know any timetable of, but possibly soon, Terraria, the board game based off of the, you know, indie smash video game, sort of like a Minecraft, if you will. I know, not the same thing whatsoever. You don't have to tell me in the comment section, but more adventure exploring, battling, you know, weapons, you know, everything along those lines as well. And this is from Paper Fort Games. This is the company who also had the more recent crowdfunding success of Cosmoctopus. So that was a very surprising hit overall. And so we're going to see what they can bring to it. It looks like it's going to have a few miniatures based off of the sculpts in progress from their website. But again, no concrete details whatsoever. No details over on Board Game Geek at all. Then at some point here, I believe in Q1, we're also going to have the latest from Karma Games, the finally delayed but now coming Clans of Caledonia expansion, Industria. And Industria is just going to give us more strategies, clans, and somehow you're going to be having to adapt to the Industrial Revolution. More port tiles, more end of round scoring tiles, and a contract refill board. And milestones. They say just going to increase the replayability as a whole. So if you were a big fan of Clans of Caledonia in the first place, which is, you know, a top 100 Board Game Geek game of all time as well, that's going to be one of the heavier ones, probably bigger named, that's also going to be launching this month. Then we're going back over, and this is interesting, this is over on Kickstarter actually, and this is Horror on the Orient Express. This is also one of my top ones of the year potentially. This is based on the Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game, but they're porting it into a miniature-based dungeon crawl, if you will, essentially. And it is by the authors, and this is going off of pedigree, right? Nemesis, Frostpunk, and Destinies. Surprisingly, though, of all of these, of which has the lowest of these last couple that I just did, Terraria, Clans, Game of Thrones, this one actually has the lowest amount of preview followers on the pre-launch page, I guess I should say. So, again, the aesthetic is there, the vibes from this is there, but is it going to rubber meet the road? And what is going to make it unique? I think Heavy Cardboard did a playthrough of it, I think earlier in the year, last year. And so that's really the only details we have at this point, but I believe they're going for a late Q1 launch as well. Then we have probably one of the heaviest Euro games, more anticipated probably than anything else that we've seen, because it's been drumming up the hype in the past 2023, and that's Galactic Cruise. And this is coming from Kinson Key Games, and it's going to be offering a luxury cruise into space. So heavy worker placement, space vacation, supervising the company and building shuttles and surprising guests along the way with all the various things you'd want on a cruise in the first place, right? But you're going to have to send your workers up with them. You're going to have to guide them. You're going to have to become CEO and just manage things to the best of your ability. So probably a little heavier than what you see normally on my channel, but this is going to be the big one, I think, that's making waves so far from that aspect of things. Then we have Tokyo Highway, which is going to be a Rainbow City expansion, which is building and balancing even larger scenes with new scenery, as well as new rules to go along with this to expand it even further as a Japanese import to a wider audience now. And Itten is going to be bringing it over, and they've done great crowdfunding campaigns as well in the past, so it's going to be really intriguing to see what they've got in store for us this time too. Now, next up, we're also going to have one from Dranda Games, which you remember their solar-based games, Solar Storm, if you will, one of their other previous ones. This one is going to be Explorers of Navoria, where this is completely different altogether, right? This is looking like a combination of Lands of Galzir and Defenders of the Wild, and it's taking more of a different spin with a slight worker placement, as well as open drafting and set collection, where you're moving around using your adventure cards to help you build settlements on emerging continents, crafting items, collaborating with different races, boosting your power, and get more unlocked abilities to engine build in your tableau to get, you know, better relationships with the different races in the continent in the first place. What is the end game going to look like? I have no idea, but this is actually going to be a translation now from, I believe, a Chinese game into English, and people have had this on their radar on the low key on the social media side, as well as sort of the dark horse side of the board gaming scene, if you will. And so it's really going to be interesting to see if this one stands up now that it's going to get wider marketing potentially, especially with Dranda bringing it to crowdfunding. So excited to see. And this one's actually probably one of the first ones launching in Q4, and it's actually launching on the 8th of January. Now, last up here, because I saw this one over on Reddit and I really was intrigued by it. It gives me a Netrunner pre-construct vibes. Now it says 2 to 4 player. This is Wormwood, which calls itself an expandable card game. So I'm a little trepidatious there. But what they really say is you have your deck optimized to, you know, head to head go up with opponents. And again, playing from 2 to 4 players, helping, hindering, trying to, you know, create the CCG feel with more of a closed box experience. 8 different factions, 50 card decks, 30 of which cards in your deck are going to be unique to your faction, 20 of which are going to be what they're calling echoes, which are sort of the things you're building, remnants of humanity left in the world. And you kind of have to think, you know, where are their echoes hiding, because that's what you're going to be trying to destroy, steal, build, or conquer, depending on how you want to achieve the end game victory for you. And going back, they clarify over on the Board Game Geek comment section that it's not really expandable like TCG model, that it's going to be an LCG, non-collectible, but you can get, you know, additional expansion cards as pre-conducted decks composed of, well, single cards, so you can sort of sub out some of the core factions, I guess, or some elements of the core factions more than anything else. So as someone who doesn't do constructed decks very well, or necessarily have the time and space and effort and everything else that goes along with that needed, Wormwood, you know, in a box, Netrunner in a box, if you will, in a different sense, style, and theme. Okay, post-apocalyptic, I'm there. Tune me in. So that one's super high on my radar as well. And I don't know if this is Q1, but we're thrown in here just at the end, tail end here. There's going to be an upcoming Regicide Legacy game. Yeah, Regicide Legacy. Not a whole lot of details. You can sign up for their newsletter on their website. But I'm a big fan of Regicide, the base game, and make a legacy game out of it. You know, one of the few card games that my family, my in-laws, have really been receptive to as a non-gaming family. And so if you can provide me more of a good thing to hook them in a little bit, and the price point being good for a card game, man, that one is going to be, again, these last two at the end, not least by any means. Some of the most intriguing stuff on this list as a whole. So that's why you tune in all the way to the end on Liege's videos. Not just because he intends to ramble at the end and talk about nonsensical things that are completely unrelated to games in the first place, or he talks about why his kids are sick all the time and why he gets sick and everything else along those lines, but he does that too. So that's all I got. Quarter one. And the best thing about this is, you know what? Several of the big companies like Awaken Realms, Thunderworks, CMON, you didn't really hear any of those names in this video, really, did you? But you know there's stuff coming. You know there's stuff coming. Right? And that's exciting because we find out along the way. And that's why I do videos between here and quarter two's video. So if you're not subscribed, wink, wink, nod, nod, nudge, nudge, over 9,000! Thanks for watching regardless. Peace out, stay classy, have a great day. You don't come for the camera, you don't come for the looks, but you come for, well, whatever I'm bringing that somehow has attracted you to stay in the first place. I'm done being self-deprecating. Have a great day. Peace out. See you around.